Hi, and welcome to LinkedIn for Entrepreneurs. I'm your host, Julia Zata, a LinkedIn strategist and ghostwriter, and lover of all things practical when it comes to visibility strategies. This podcast is for service based business owners who want to build their brand on LinkedIn, attract new clients, collaborators, and speaking engagements without overthinking every post or sounding like a corporate robot. And yes, we're going to keep it actionable and fun. Let's dive in. Let's talk about how to find your voice on LinkedIn. This is something I get asked a lot about. And recently, I've been binging Laura Belgray's content. If you're not familiar with her, she is a top notch writer. She's funny, she's irreverent, she's no BS New Yorker type. And she also has a book out that's called Tough Titties that you absolutely must read. And if you're not familiar with Belgray, she's worked with Marie Forleo on The Copy Cure, and she's worked with Amy Porterfield and lots of really big names in the industry. And one thing she said on a reel that I saw recently is how using AI to write your content is like putting everybody's words into a blender and coming out with a smoothie that just kind of tastes the same and doesn't have a personality. And that made me think about how much people struggle with finding their tone of voice, especially when they're posting for the first time on a platform like LinkedIn, and how they probably think AI is a great option for helping them write posts. So I wanted to share some tips to help you find your tone of voice if you find yourself in this position. Also wanted to say disclaimer that I don't think there's anything wrong with using AI. I love it. I use it a lot. But if you use AI a lot and if you read a lot of AI content, you'll notice how similar posts end up being in structure and tone of voice, and you really need to make yours stand out if you want to be noticed. And so you have to be clever about how you use AI, which means you need to be able to edit the output and you need to infuse whatever output you get with your own tone of voice and also remove the tells that you're using AI as much as possible. Anywho, today I want to talk about how do you find your tone of voice so that you can post confidently on LinkedIn. And the issue with tone of voice on LinkedIn is that because it's a professional platform, so many people feel intimidated by it. And then they start to question and second guess themselves as to like, well, do I need to sound more professional or do I need to change how I show up so that it fits the platform? And my thoughts on that are yes, you need to change how you show up, but not in your tone of voice, in how you format and present your content, but not in how your tone of voice is. That should remain consistent throughout any platform or writing that you do. So let's get into how do you find your tone of voice so that you can stand out on LinkedIn and attract the right people for your business. And I have 7 tips for you. So let's start with number 1. First of all, your tone of voice, one of the tells of your tone of voice are idioms and phrases that you use on repeat in conversation. So for example, I will say spill the beans, easy peasy. I have a friend that always gives a percentage to describe how she's feeling. She'll say something like, I'm 98% sure that I'll be going to that event, or I'm 75% feeling, and so I think it's so funny to use that kind of metric to describe how she's feeling or which way she's leaning. So that's very much a thing that I would include in her content if I was writing for her. And so you need to think about what are the idioms and phrases that you use on repeat and make sure that they show up in your copy. It's usually these things that we want to edit out of our copy, but they actually make our writing, our posts, even talk to camera video, they make them sound more like us. And then tip number 2 for how to find your voice is use voice to text tools. For example, I use Otter, but there's other apps out there. And instead of sitting down to write your post, just record a voice memo and then take that output and clean it up, format it, etc. And that automatically sounds like you because that's exactly what you sound like. Okay, so next is journaling. So you can write for fun, right? Or just for self-development. And you could write in a notebook or you can use an app. I've started using an app lately called 750 Words that actually Laura Belgray recommended, and I like it. I'm more comfortable typing than I am writing by hand.
And so I use this online app, 750 words, but you could use any old Word doc to write down your thoughts and capture whatever's happening in your life. I try and highlight the conversations I've had with my friends, either through voice messages or in person, because that's where I find threads that can be turned into stories. And I am using stories a little bit more in my emails now as a test, following Laura Belgrave's advice and also as a writing practice for myself. I find it fun to do. And it seems that my emails get more opens and click throughs when I'm using stories paired with a helpful lesson. So we'll see. And by the way, if you're not signed up to my email list, you definitely should do that. There's a link in the show notes to sign up. Okay. And what else? So another really helpful tip for finding your tone of voice is reading good content. I love signing up to email newsletters from people that are good writers. I follow copywriters who are specialized in short form copy. And I try and read books or articles on Substack from people that are excellent writers that have a lot of personality, that add quote unquote value, and in different formats. So email, blog format, and social media format, because it just helps train my brain to recognize what good content looks like. And you'll know when you read good content, it makes you feel something, it makes you excited or curious, it generates emotions. And so reading good content will help you improve your content as well. Hey, and if you want a list of who I like to follow and read, just send me a DM over on LinkedIn and I'll shoot you a short list of my favorite copywriters. It's quite an eclectic mix, so don't be surprised when you get it. All right, tip number 5 is add specific details. So when you are adding personal details into your posts, which you definitely should because they'll make you more relatable, you want to make those details specific and not generic. So for example, instead of saying I walked my dog, I went for a walk with Faith and we went to the park well, which is where we go every day. Obviously, you'd have to rewrite that so it's more compelling, but adding little details. And with LinkedIn, one of the advantages is that you can just add a photo. And so when you add a behind the scenes photo of what you're up to, it satisfies our curiosity. We want to look and see what you're up to. And we like those unfiltered moments. We like a little bit more of a personal view of what you're up to. So it can be a photo of your desk in case you don't like taking selfies, which you totally need to get over, in my opinion. But it could be a photo of your desk. It could be a photo of your dog. It could be a photo of a spot that you go to or work from or something that's personal to you. And those details also need to go into your writing, not necessarily in every single post, but you want to sprinkle them in so that you become recognizable and so that you also give people something to latch onto, something they can relate to. And I have a podcast where I talk about the different content themes I recommend using for your LinkedIn posts. And if I'm not mistaken, it's podcast number 4 about how to create a content strategy for LinkedIn. So go have a listen to that one if you haven't yet. And then 2 more tips and we're out of here. So tip number 6 is just a reminder that sometimes your voice might sound boring to you, but it's not necessarily going to be perceived that way to others. Because I'll tell you personally, when I look at my own writing, I'm like, whoa, it's so boring, so matter of fact. And yeah, okay, well, maybe that's just my tone of voice right now, and that's okay. But if I try and embellish it and make it sound quirky or, I don't know, clever or like somebody else that's not me, I'm sure people can feel it. And so don't worry too much about feeling like your voice is boring or not authentic enough, because it compounds. The content you share in the voice that's naturally yours creates an identity that people recognize. And then, okay, this is the very, very last tip for today, tip number 7, which is before you hit publish, read your posts out loud. And so disclaimer, I'm super lazy about this. I even have an app installed in my browser that reads text for me. I love it. But I've stopped using it to read my own posts and emails back to me because I don't catch the parts that don't sound like me if I've got to AI voice reading to me. It sounds like somebody else's stuff. It sounds perfectly fine. But when I read in my own voice out loud, the copy that I write, I catch things that I would never say in real life. And so I change those to how I would say it out loud so that my content sounds conversational and it sounds like me. And that sometimes means removing a more polished or more correct term or word or phrase and using the one that I would use. And so I recommend you do that too. It's a great way to not just proofread your copy, but also tone check it. Make sure it actually sounds like you and you would really actually say those things out loud. All right, so I hope you find these 7 tips helpful, and I'd love to hear which one lands for you the most. So feel free to DM me on LinkedIn and let me know. And if you want to take this a step further, if you want a little bit more personalized help, I have a LinkedIn visibility call that I offer for free. These calls are 30-minute calls where we go over your content, your profile, so we can see what you can spruce up so it improves your personal brand and image. If you want to improve your LinkedIn presence and don't know where to start and feel a little bit overwhelmed by it all, book a LinkedIn visibility call and let's talk about it. All right? So I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will speak to you soon.
Thanks for tuning in to LinkedIn for Entrepreneurs. If you found this episode helpful, please share it on LinkedIn or on your favorite social media platform. And if you really want to make my day, leave me a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps more business owners find this show. Thanks again for listening, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.